Society of North America. I would like to welcome you all to ISNA's Friday Reflections. Today we have with us Dr. Sameera Ahmed, so I will inshallah begin by introducing her. Dr. Sameera Ahmed holds a PhD in clinical psychology. She has a clinical practice in Canton, Michigan, and has taught classes at a variety of universities across the nation. She is known for her contributions in promoting Muslim mental health through the publication of a handbook called Counseling Muslims, Handbook of Mental Health Issues and Interventions. Dr. Ahmed is a leading expert of American Muslim youth and has produced numerous groundbreaking publications, including The State of American Muslim Youth, Uplifting Black Muslim Youth, Prevalence of Risk Behaviors of U.S. Muslim College Students, and Alcohol Use Among U.S. Muslim College Students. She also serves as Associate Editor for the Journal of Muslim Mental Health. Dr. Ahmed has been invited as a subject matter expert to events organized by the White House, Health and Human Services, Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration, and the Department of Education. She has also been cited in numerous media outlets, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Atlantic. Please welcome Dr. Sameera Ahmed.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على الرسول الكريم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Jazakallah khair for the introduction, Brother Basharat. We really appreciate inviting me today to be able to speak about an important topic. And also before we begin though, I think it's really important and we're really appreciative of ISNA for inviting me to share resources that we have for the community. As you mentioned, the Family Youth Institute is a research and education institute that is really meant to empower American families. And in so doing that, one of the things that we really focus on doing is empowering our families, our communities through research and education. And so I encourage you to follow the work that we're doing, use our resources to really help strengthen our families, inshallah. So it is an honor for me to be here with you. One of the things that when we talk about the work that we're doing, we think about this year and all that's been happening. It's been a really tough year for us as individuals in this nation. We've gone through, 1 minute, everything's normal. We're interacting, we're going to work, we're going to school, and then boom, everything's changed, right? And our lives are upside down because of this virus that many of us can't even see, right? And so when we can't see it, we've all had to scramble to try to figure out what are the things that we need to do to deal with this new reality. And one of the things that we've provided for the community is these resources where we can really think about how to address this new reality that we're living in terms of how are we working? How are we not, destroying our families because of the frustration and tensions that we may be experiencing right now, because we're all together in one place. Really thinking about, how do we help our children understand what's going on when especially with the younger ones, when they're frustrated and they want to go out and play with their friends and do different things that they're normally used to do, really giving these resources. And so when we think about this year, we recognize that there's a lot going on. And so, as we're entering this 9th year of the pandemic, ninth month of the pandemic, we can all agree it's been really tough. And as we look ahead, we know that we have an election in front of us. And that election is looming over us. And many of us are experiencing election-related anxiety and stress. Right? And the research from the American Psychological Association is finding that almost 2/3 of us are reporting that this election is really causing us a lot of stress. And so part of what we want to do is to be able to understand, what can we do about that? How can we deal with the stress? And I think part of what we're trying to do is provide you some of those resources today. When we think about kind of the differences of all the different things that we're struggling with, one of the challenges that we're facing is, we have one on top of the other, many different challenges that are really having an impact on how we're doing things. We have the racial injustice, you have the pandemic, you have the election, and it just seems like there's so much going on for us, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us, Allah reminds us, He has not burdened us with a burden that we can't bear. And so part of what we want to do today is really think about what are the different things that we can do? What are the tools that we can do in order to help us deal with these difficulties? What are the different challenges that we have in front of us? And so what I want to do is provide us with some ideas of how to address these issues. And so part of it is recognizing, first and foremost, what is the impact of chronic stress? How can we as believers take this reality? How can we take this information and acknowledge that the stress is there, deal with that stress, and transform it in a way that is positive and that is helpful? And so first of all, we need to recognize what stress is. It is important to recognize that stress is just the body's reaction to natural demands. There are two different types of stress when we think about it. There is positive stress, and then there is negative stress. When we think of the positive stress, right, what we recognize is that the positive stress is the stress that if we have a little bit of it, it can get us to do the work that needs to happen. It allows us to, get our deadlines on, doing the things that we don't really like doing. The laundry, the work, the garbage, all those little things that we don't like doing it, but sometimes we just need to get it done. Work deadlines. And sometimes it's the stress that really helps us, get the job done. And that's why we often tend to rely on procrastination. But then there's this negative stress, right? And there is that negative stress that can really cause problems for us: anxiety, depression, even health problems. And so that's the unhealthy stress that we see. Now, in small doses, it's not a problem. But when we think about what we're going through today, right, we have this chronic stress that's happening over and over again. It can have a long-lasting impact, right? We think about, some of us are experiencing stress in ways that are kind of slowing us down, not able to do many of the different things that we want to do. It's causing us worry, sadness, hopelessness, and physical tension. And when we think about the election, we may be worried about what's going to happen next. We may get stuck in this cycle of thinking of, okay, well, if this happens, then what's going to happen next? And then after that, and it's called catastrophic thinking. And so we may be experiencing these worries, this sadness, this hopelessness, this physical tension in our bodies, and that's slowing us down. It can also result in us feeling that we don't have the energy to carry on different tasks that we're responsible for. Being the basic home stuff or work, we're getting distracted and not able to concentrate. So all of that may be going on. And so it's really important that we start off by understanding that these symptoms that we're talking about, the feelings that are going on in our body, these are all things that may be happening to you. And if that is the case, to recognize that you're not alone. This impact is happening for a lot of people. Like I said earlier, almost 2/3 of Americans are experiencing the stress, election-related stress. And so now the question is, well, we start off in identifying what the issue is and the problem. We also need to understand, okay, what are we going to do about it? right? And so to recognize, we want to start off with recognizing that, yes, this is an issue, but alhamdulillah, because of our deen, we have this rich legacy of psychology within Islam, right? And we have many ways of addressing this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the scholars, when we look at our tradition, we see that we can address it from a psychological perspective in three different ways, in three different directions. And traditionally, we've talked about the aql, the intellect. We've talked about the ruh, the spirit. And we've talked about the jasad, the body. And so when we think about this, I want to kind of talk about how we're going to prepare in these three areas. How can we prepare to deal with this issue in a way that's productive? So when we think about this, we want to start off with the aql, right? We want to think about reframing what has been going on and how we see the problem, how we see the issue. And we start off by reminding ourselves what Allah has reminded us in the Quran. And we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and loss of wealth and lives and fruits. But give good tidings to the patient. Allah's already mentally prepared us for this. We know we're going to have tests in life. And this is just one of those tests. COVID, racial injustice, the elections, it's test after test. And we know this dunya is about tests, right? And when we think about tests in our professional world, in school, we don't have to like the test, right? We don't have to want the test, but we still have to prepare and take the test. And we have to prepare and take it and get a good grade. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us, and he's preparing us, and he's telling us, look, these are just tests. And when we reframe this reality as a test, and we recognize that Allah in his infinite mercy is going to test us, but he's not going to hold us account for the outcome. He only holds us account for our efforts. And so when we talk about this, we have to really think within our brains and understand that we're only accountable for the efforts that we take into place. And so when we see the news and we read our news feeds in social media, what we want to remind ourselves is that, yes, this is a test, right? And we will have to deal with it. And that this information, that we allowing into our brain, how are we using this? What are we going to do with this test? And so part of that is, one, the mental reframe, but also what are we allowing ourselves to think about? So one of the things that often happens is when we're watching the news and reading the news feed is we begin to have these intrusive thoughts, and these thoughts that really have an impact on how we see the world and how we interact with the world. And so these intrusive thoughts about the elections really cause us to worry, have these issues rise up in our mind and kind of perseverate and really think about over and over and over again. And while we're thinking about it, it drains us of our energy. It drains us of physically, emotionally, psychologically. And so one of the things that is a source of that is the constant media consumption. Yes, we need to know what's going on. But do we need to be online 24/7 reading every single article, every single news article, every single news item? No, we get the information and we think about it and learn and know enough of what we need to know to be able to then act upon it. And so we start with that mental reframe, recognizing that, okay, this is a test. I need to know exactly what I need to know and then go on. And so really it's important to, as we help to reframe, to really decrease the consumption, the unnecessary consumption that we may be having. And then for those of us who have that consumption, and we end up kind of catastrophizing, thinking about the situation more and more and kind of let it drain us, what we also want to do is take that and have an association with that, right? So we take those intrusive thoughts, and then what we do is we use that. So, and we attach that thought, that worry that we have, with another thought, right? And so those thoughts could be different mantras you say to yourself. It could be, for example, du'as that you may have. It could be calling on the names of Allah. It could be certain verses from the Quran that really help and connect with you. And if you think about one of the things that we've been encouraged by the Prophet ﷺ to say is, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel, right? Sufficient for us is Allah. Sufficient for us is Allah, and He is the best disposer of faith. Now that's an example. You can also say Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than all the different people and individuals, the stresses that we're facing. He is better, He is bigger, He is in more control. Remembering that who Allah is by remembering the names of Allah, the fact that He is the controller, He is the one who gives honor and takes honor. He is the one who debases whoever He wills. Just really going back and associating whenever you have those negative thoughts, those kind of concerns, those intrusive thoughts, and immediately associating those intrusive thoughts with du'as and verses of the Quran so that you can distract yourself from things that you have no control over, right? So we have no control over what's going to happen, but we do have control over our actions, right? And so when we leave what we have no control over to Allah, then we can focus our energy and free our time and energy on acting upon things. And so we move to the next thing, right? We need to take action, because remember, Allah has reminded us, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change that which is within themselves. We have to take the action. And that's kind of the second action of the jasad, the body. We have to take that stress. We have to convert it, channel it, to take this election and channel that stress and anxiety and tension, make it positive so that it's resulting in us being productive, doing something with that anxiety and that angst and that, that energy, and channel it towards something that we actually do have control over, right? And Allah has reminded us that, when you do that, then our situation can change. So call your friends and family and make sure they are planning on voting. Sharing with them what's at stake. Why is it something that's so important for us that each and every one of us vote? To really make sure that they're actually planning on voting. Because, one of the challenges we had last election was that many people didn't vote, or they voted third party, or, whatever. And so really for us to think about, what do we have control over? Well, we can vote. We can make sure we reach out to our family and friends and make sure they're voting. We can also take it to the next level and be part of one of the Get Out the Vote campaigns. There are so many different organizations out there who are working tirelessly to make sure that the Muslim vote counts. And so sign up with one of the phone banks. You can do it from home. Sign up and call people up and try to make sure that everybody is voting, everybody we know. And one of the things, the benefits of doing that is now you've taken that kind of emotional energy and energy where you've been thinking and kind of dwelling and kind of perseverating on, all the bad things that can happen, and you're channeling it towards taking action, right? And so when you do that, what we find in the research is that it actually results in decreasing stress. When you sit, watch the news, and do nothing about it, it increases stress. But when you're actually taking action, we find from the research that it's decreasing stress. So help decrease your stress by going out. And when you're part of something bigger, you're feeling less isolated. You're working with other people making a difference. And that camaraderie also decreases the social isolation that sometimes you may have, thinking alone by ourselves in a corner, kind of thinking over and over again about all kind of the doomsday possibilities. So again, when you take action, what you find is the importance of really, one, you're doing something about it, you're channeling your energy, you're channeling your body, you're channeling your time and effort towards something positive. You recognize you're part of something bigger, you're developing a camaraderie with other people who are doing the same thing. And so you see this positive effect. And then you know that you can be in front of Allah on the day of judgment and be able to say, Ya Allah, no matter what the outcome, I did everything that I could do. I was there. Yes, I was stressed. I channeled that stress positively. So make sure that you're doing that. Second, another action that it's really important for us to do is to maintain a balance. We are ummatan wasata. We have to make sure that while we're doing that, we also are engaged in non-election related activities that give us relaxation, that give us comfort. So, engage in physical activity and exercise. Make sure you're reading a good book to kind of keep you going and energized. Get involved in DIY projects, something around the house, do things that connect you with others. Really make sure that you're focusing on the people around you, the things around you, while you're able to find joy in it. And that helps you cope with that stress that we're currently under, and really just do something. The other thing is to recognize, in addition to pre-election work that I'm suggesting, is to also recognize that election day is going to be stressful, and so will the days after that, right? So, because the election day, it's going to take weeks, and because of the mail-in voting and so much else is going on, right? So really think about, what are you going to do election day and the following days, and prepare for it. And that could mean, reaching out to family and friends who may also be anxious, but you channel your time and energy, because when you're with each other, you can concentrate on each other, build relationships, strengthen that connection and bond with each other. So be with friends, get support. And as I mentioned earlier, decrease the media consumption, because it has an impact on your mental health and well-being. Make sure that you take time to get off, and you connect with others, and you're doing other activities. So in addition to taking action, we also need to make sure, in addition to doing that, to address the stress by taking care of our spirituality. Many of us are familiar of the hadith. Anas ibn Malik reports that a man came to the Messenger of Allah and said, "O Messenger of Allah, Ya Rasulullah, should I tie my camel and trust in Allah, or should I just leave her untied and trust Allah?" Right? So basically, she just sit down and make dua and that's it. And the Prophet ﷺ reminded us and said, tie her and trust in Allah. You need both. You can't do one or at the expense of the other. And so while we are preparing and dealing with our stress by channeling our efforts in our mind and through our body and action, the third and very important thing that we also need to be doing is to developing our relationship with Allah, to rely on Allah, to trust in Allah. When we look at this hadith, recognize that there's so much that we need to do in this time period, because only Allah is going to control what's going to happen. He is the one who has the bird's eye view of what's going on. He's the one who can change things one way or the other. And so it's really important that we use this time to engage in reading extra Quran. Take that energy of thinking that you may have been doing and dwelling over what are the possibilities that could happen and, stressing out, channel that time to read a little bit more Quran than you might have been doing beforehand. We're now entering fall, and the days are shorter and the nights are longer. Wake up 15 minutes before Fajr, right? Wake up 15 minutes before Fajr and pray tahajjud, right? In your sujood, beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a positive election outcome. If we're collectively begging in the darkness of the night and working hard during the day, then we will have fulfilled our duty, right? So use these short days. Fast Mondays and Thursdays. It's only a few hours. You're basically having your breakfast and having a little bit of a late dinner. Use this time to strengthen our reliance, our trust, our connection on Allah, with Allah. And remember that the victory will come from Allah. We need to trust in Him, but we also need to do the work. And so tie your camel and rely on Allah. And as we talk about this, we've shared the many different ways that we can combat the election stress, right? And we talked about using our intellect. We've talked about our physical, taking the action, channeling our physical energy and our attention in our body. We've talked about building our spiritual strength. Sometimes we have to recognize that people are going to need a little bit more extra help. It could be that you may be biologically wired differently. You may need more neurochemicals. Your neurochemicals may be lower. And so that you may be experiencing additional stress and tension within your body. And so you may need additional help. You may have difficult family situations, work situation, or past history of challenges and abuse and difficulty. And so that will add to your vulnerability, add to your stress that you may be experiencing, resulting in anxiety and depression. And if you are in this situation and you've tried what I've talked about, it's really important that you get the help from a mental health professional. Again, I want to remind you, if you are having a heart problem, you will go to the cardiologist. You're not going to go to the librarian for help. You'll go to the cardiologist. And so it's really important that if you're having problems, that you see a professional, a mental health professional, to help deal with the stress that you're struggling with. Right? And so the FYI, the Family Youth Institute recently came out with infographics on helping our community understand what are the things that you need, when would you probably need therapy? Where do you go for a therapist? How do you figure out if the therapist is a good therapist and good fit for you? I mean, this stuff is really confusing. And we recognize that many of us in our community are really struggling right now because of all the different layers of what's going on. We recognize that. And so we've developed a series to help guide you. And in addition to these series, what we also have is, you may recognize that, now that you know that you need to get therapy and you want help and you have to figure out how you're going to do it, you might want to know, where do I find therapists? And so again, if you reach out to us at the FYI, if you join us on our email list, you can find and have access to the different Muslim mental health professionals available across the nation. And if you choose that you don't want a Muslim mental health professional, or you may not have access to a Muslim mental health professional in your area because of where you live, that's okay. We also have developed a book directly for non-Muslim professionals to help them counsel you and work with you in a way that's religiously and culturally competent. And so it's really important that if you are struggling, that you please get the help that you need when you need it, so that you're able to conquer this, right? We are responsible in front of Allah for our health and well-being, and that includes mental health and well-being. And so, as we conclude, I really want to make sure that you know that we have these resources available for you, and to make sure that it's tailored for the Muslim community. Use it, benefit from it, and really get the help that you need, because these stresses can really have a long-term impact on your well-being, your family's well-being and health, and your next generation, our children. And so when we have these resources available, it's really important to make the benefit of it. And as we conclude, I just want to remind you that learn about the FYI. There's tons of resources there. And as we near the elections, we will be having more and more resources related to election and the stress and how to deal with what's going on, and specific resources for our community. So we ask you to sign up to our daily articles and follow us on different social media platforms. And so as we talked about today, about the increased stress that many of us are experiencing, let's channel that stress. Let's channel that stress so that it becomes good stress, healthy stress, stress that really motivates us in these last few weeks, last few days of the election to make a difference, to change, to make sure that if you haven't voted already, to get out and vote, to reach out to individuals in our communities, in our kind of network, to make sure that they are voting, and to see what else can you do to make a difference, to really channel that anxiety and that tension and that frustration that we may be having in a positive way towards action, to really uplift ourselves and make sure that we're experiencing the stress in a very healthy way, as opposed to a negative way. And so in these final days, up to the election, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen us. We ask Al-Fattah, the one who opens all doors of mercy and good, as well as the one who creates the openings for any challenge that confronts us, that we're struggling with. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open the doors of goodness for us and our nation. We ask our wali, our protecting friend, to help us succeed in these last few days as we work towards election, to give us contentment in our heart, to help us deal and quell the anxiety that many of us may be having, to help us get the energy, the perseverance to use this energy, channel this energy to make a difference, and to do the hard work that's needed to get the job done. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us, to help us, and to allow us to be amongst the victorious. Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallahu khair. Thank you so much, Dr. Sameera, for your time today. MashaAllah, a lot of information that you presented, I'm sure will be very beneficial for our audience and our community, inshallah. Thank you to all of you for attending today with us, this program. Please continue to stay engaged with ISNA as we bring you more programming in this current environment. Inshallah, we will continue our virtual programs. Every Friday, we bring you the Friday Reflections, but we are also going to be doing other events throughout the month of November and December. You can check out our website, isna.net. We have listed all our upcoming events on our website. Elections are on and voting has started, as all of you know. So inshallah, please remember to vote. As we have said before, the stakes are high. Inshallah, stay engaged and remember to vote this season. If you have not already, if you're not receiving the ISNA weekly e-newsletter, which we send out every Wednesday, please do sign up on. You can do so on our website. You can simply, subscribe, put your email so that you can receive our weekly e-newsletter with all our events. Jazakallahu khairan. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.